So what I'm really going to focus on is advances that have made EME easier, and largely they are the digital modes. I'm down here in Florida, EL 96, and I've operated considerably on the bands. So a lot of this is the text I'll review with you, and so my very first experience on 2 meters was with this pair of acorn tubes out of the 1945 ARRL handbook, and we had a blast with those. You use a 90-volt battery and a 1.5-volt battery for the filaments, and later on the Heathkit tour, and after that I had one of these. You know, who had money when you were a little kid. So I had the various FM repeaters with different crystals for my Sonoboy transmitter. And later on, when I was I'm a retired physician, hence my call K1DS, that looks like kids, because I was a pediatrician and my wife selected that call when we had incentive licensing. So when I was doing my residency in pediatrics at the Mass General, one night we needed a respirator up in the ICU, in the pediatric ICU, and the respiratory tech came in, and everybody had a beeper in those days, but he also had a walkie-talkie strapped to his belt. And, you know, one thing led to the other. And he said, oh, yeah, let me get you on the repeater and this and that, and come to the Waltham Amateur Radio Group. And George Caswell, who was K1MON, he's passed now, lent me a 2-meter multi-channel transceiver. And so then as my internship year was coming, or my residency year was coming to an end, he said, oh, how would you like to operate the VHF contest with us? And we went up to a hill in the Waltham Park there, and I was the 222 guy, and you know, the rest is history. So you probably know the Northeast Weak Signal Group, which is a general VHF group that comes out of New England, and W1GHZ was there, and so on. Bob BAQ and I were both charter members, N1BAQ, and we, you know, got a lot of ideas and so on. Now I live in Boynton Beach, and of course we have antenna restrictions. What I'm showing you here is my Rover van. When I lived in Pennsylvania, again, I was in a CCR community that's, you know, rules and regulations and restrictions, covenants and restrictions. And anyway, here you can see the 6-meter Moxon. I have 4 loopers for the microwave bands, 902 and 1296, 2304, 3456. Then the 432 beam, the 2-meter beam, 220 beam. Over here is a 5 and 10 gigahertz dish, and this is 24 gigahertz. And at any rate, I roved all around New England. I've talked about that in the past, and I used to have a wonderful time. So what happened was that Down East Microwave, well, let me read this a little. So I was curious about EME when Ed, WA1HYN at the time, now K1ZE, was living up on Jeremoth Hill. And both of us were kind of interested in VHF. And he invited Frank, NC1I, who lives up in Massachusetts, to come down and bring his kilowatt 432 rig, and Ed set up a 4-bay Yagi on 432 with a kind of a polar mount in his backyard, and they quote, activated Rhode Island for EME. And I heard about this, and I had always been curious to find out, you know, what this EME sounded like and what it was about. And I went up there, and they put a pair of headphones on me, and they after they called CQ, they go, "Oh, there he is. He's coming back to me." And I said, "I have a good ear, but I'm not hearing a thing." And I was very unimpressed. And I knew they weren't making it up, but I thought, heck, you know, all this work for that tiny little signal, I'm not getting it. So as it says, I was unimpressed. And then what happened was when I was living in Pennsylvania, we used to go up to Frenchtown, New Jersey, where Steve Castro, N2CEI, had his business called Down East Microwave. And one day, Steve said, you know, I'm going to move to Live Oak, Florida, and take the business with me. And I'm getting rid of a lot of old aluminum. And he said, I have four 2-meter Yagis that are 32 feet long. And if you want them, come get them. So I said, okay, this is an opportunity for me. And here's what I did was I put the Yagi on my van, and you know, I went out to an open field where you could just about see moonrise and moonset. And my first attempt was with W5UN, who had 16 or more Yagis on the moon. And he lived in Texas, and he had that truck that drove it around a circle for its azimuth and so on. And what happened is we sequenced for about 45 minutes, and then I finally started to hear him. But then the hour was going to run out, and we only sked for an hour. So I said, okay, you know, we sort of had a partial. But because I realized how I needed to listen carefully on the frequency, what happened was that my call went out on the reflectors, I guess, and pretty soon SV1BTR was sending me emails that he wants to work me on 2-meter EME. So here I went out with my TS2000 and a long Yagi and this TE amplifier. And if you wait, okay. So fast forward a little bit. So I had these 2-meter Yagis, and then another friend of mine in my club down in Pennsylvania was getting rid of 432 Yagis. So I bought myself this little trailer because I can't have any outdoor antennas of permanence. There's a little tower here, and the rotor is in the tower. I have a thrust bearing here, and there's a elevation rotor here. And this was a very nice 432 setup. And then came the free dish. There is no such thing as a free dish. I've written this story up before because having this free dish cost me a few $1,000s. Buying the trailer, the rotor, the feed, the amplifier, and all that sort of stuff. So what's happened though is it was been tremendously satisfying to operate. And as you can see, I operated right out of my driveway. But each time I would operate, I had to put the dish together with the 4 pedals mounted on the tower and so on. This tower, of course, folded down. And then because I really got the bug, I have gone to all of the international EME conferences since the year 2000. They have them every 2 years. They rotate different countries to the United States, Europe, in Germany, and the last one we had was in the Netherlands. We were going back to Prague. And over time, I've operated on all these bands myself through 13 sonometers, that's 2304. And for the last 10 years, this will be my 10th actually, I've been the author of the EME contest color commentary, and that followed having done that for the June VHF contest and the 10 gigahertz and up contest. But it's been a lot of fun. And what I will tell you is that I've gotten to meet in person so many people from around the world that are EME ops and their spouses. It's a great fraternity. So let's talk about a little of what's been going on in EME. Again, that's Earth, Moon, Earth. The signal originates on the Earth, it bounces off the moon and comes back to Earth. It takes 2.5 seconds, or roughly 2.8 seconds, for the signal to come back and forth, depending on how far away the moon is from the Earth at the time, and it can vary by several tens of thousands of miles. And when it gets a little closer to the Earth, of course, the signals are a lot better. So as I've been writing up the results of the contests for a number of years here, you can see that the top line is the number of log submissions by band in the ARRL contest. And clearly 2 meters is the winner, followed by 1296, okay? And then by 432. So those are the 3 most active bands. However, down here, you're going to see a growing interest in 2304 and a special growing interest in 10 gigahertz. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So I stuck this picture in to show you that you don't need to go out and get a special antenna and so on. This is a homebrew 8-foot dish or so. And these are just strips of wood which are attached onto a plywood hub, and it's hand elevated and pointed. And the feed's out here, which probably is a dual dipole feed. And that's Al Katz, who really was one of my mentors over the years. I guess this bar is across in the middle of some of these graphs, isn't it? You see that, right? But what I indicated in this bar graph on the bottom is from the years from 2012 to 2019, the number of contacts per band in the contest. And what is interesting to me, of course, is what's growing here on 10 gigahertz. And I added up, of course, these 4 bands to show the total of the microwaves, because this is where the interest is growing. And of course, once people left 2 meters, they were more and more interested in the higher frequencies. One of the most exciting developments is the digital modes. Joe Taylor, who is a member of our club in the Philadelphia area, K1JT, had been he's a Nobel Prize winner in 1994 in astrophysics, and he developed the weak signal digital modes, and that's why it's called WSJT, weak signal Joe Taylor. And now, of course, he has a cadre of computer wonks who have helped him develop the Q65 mode. And I just want to give you a little more background on what the activity is. And so I used the year 2020 to show the various, this is all contest activity. So you can see that 50 megahertz, and this is only the people who reported their logs, which is about 40% of those who were on the air. But what you can see here is that CW is essentially dead on 2 meters, and virtually everything is digital. Whereas on 432, 1296, 2304, and so on, there is a substantial amount of CW activity. And that there are special modes now also for use on 10 gigahertz because of the extreme issues of Doppler shift and moon tessellation and libration. But there's a lot of activity on the moon. So I wanted to enhance this by showing the recent developments that enhanced EME operations. Believe it or not, there are EME beacons on these 3 bands, 1296, 10 gig, and 24 gig. And I'll show you the examples of each one of these bullets as we progress through the slides. What it does is allow people to point their dishes better at the moon, to tune up their receiving, and it really facilitates activity if you can point your dish accurately, or your Yagis. Now we have 10 megahertz disciplined oscillators, and certainly the developments in solid state devices of power, not only all the Harris amps that came when we switched to from analog to digital TV, but there are also significant power devices for the very high microwave bands. Now we talked about those pallet SSPAs, the solid state power amplifiers, the digital communications, and the newest mode, Q65. And what I would say is that now 90+% of the digital activity is using the Q65 mode that gives us 3 dB better than the WSJT modes. And I'll explain how that works in a bit. There are many large dishes around the world that have been used for astrophysics research, and there are clubs that have used them and activated them to make it easier for the smaller stations to make EME QSOs. There are several dedicated loggers. These are chat boards where you can post your CQs and arrange skeds. Ever since VHF has changed some of its rules, that you can arrange schedules using any means you want, but during the QSO you cannot exchange any information that would be in the contest QSO. Certainly there have been many de-expeditions which are only EME type. HB9Q and his gang out of Switzerland have done several exotic ones. W7GJ has been around the world to extraordinarily exotic locations to operate 6-meter EME. There have also been portable state EME adventures, people who have either trailer mounted or otherwise portable gear to allow EMEers to get an all states award. There are commercial suppliers of much of this equipment. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that PA0PLY has a full list of people who report their capabilities. There's also EME newsletters. I didn't list them here, but there's a dedicated 2-meter EME newsletter and one for 432 and up. I forgot to mention on the last picture, that's my buddy W3SZ, also a pack rat member, who was getting his 10 gigahertz dish ready, and that's an 8-footer, and he's got 200 watts with a TWT tube. So he really puts a great signal on the moon. So this is a picture of one of the beacons located in Germany, and this is a 10 gig beacon. And let's move this out of the way. So you can see that this is a 7-meter dish. It's pretty big, and the beam width at 10 gig is only 1/3 of a degree. But the antenna gain is extraordinary at 10 gig. And so once you have 40 watts coming from the amplifier, and you use an antenna like with 54 dB of gain, you can see that you're talking in almost in the megawatts of power. And it does FSKCW and also the new digital mode, Q65. Down here, I put a picture of a very small dish. This is a maybe, I think it was a 30-inch dish, like 3/4 of a meter. And we were at the VHF conference in France, and we were receiving the beacon on this small dish. There's a 10 gig preamp mounted right at the feed, and anyway, the signals were crystal clear from the beacon. I just wanted to mention here that we have these disciplined. I can move the bar. There we go. We have GPS disciplined oscillators now, so a lot of people don't get lost on the moon. And right now, the WSJT suite has a mode called CFOM, continuous frequency on the moon, which incorporates the Doppler shift into your transmit frequency. So when you computer control your transceiver, that you don't have to worry about where the other station is located and whether I'm plus or minus the Doppler setting when I'm trying to find his signal on the moon. I put this up here as an example of high power, and this is from HB9BDD. And of course, he's got a lot of dollars. In this box on the right, there are actually 4 10 gigahertz amplifiers. Each of them is about 60 watts. And you can see on his digital watt meter, he's generating about 250 watts at 10 gigahertz solid state using 12 volts and 120 amps. Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into making this, and these are the combiners of the 4 amps. The thing is that the sky's the limit a lot of times in developing power on these higher frequencies, and most things are going solid state now. Here's an example of a 432 single solid state amplifier. I don't know if this is a homebrew design or whether this is the W6PQL boards, but you can see these devices are each a 500-watt device mounted on a copper substrate, and then on this gigantic heat sink with forced air blowing. Here's the combiner for the input, and here's the combiner for, the splitter for the input and the combiner for the output. This will set you back about $1,000 or so, but there's plenty of people willing to spend it to get on the moon. So I wanted to show a little about the Q65 activity. So what what happens is that, as it says, it takes advantage of a priori information. So it knows already the call sign it's looking for, and it knows certain message words like CQ. And what that enables, and I'm not a computer specialist, but what that enables to happen is that the data transmitted is much further compressed, and so the unknown information can sort of be highlighted. And then also it has a little short, what's called short form messages. So when you watch the sync line coming down, when the sync line jumps from one to another, it says, it can indicate the other station is ready to receive messages. And although these are not digitally decoded messages, the auto sequencing doesn't decode them, but you can see by eye what has transpired in getting a Roger or 73s. The Q65 codes also can be modified. You can use a 15-second sequence, a 30-second sequence, a 60, or a 120, depending on what bands you're using, what the conditions are, and the power, certainly, those are all variables. What I wanted to show here is some of the astrophysics or the radio astronomy dishes around the world that are being activated. Some of you may be familiar with the Project Diana dish in New Jersey, which is now, there's a radio club that's affiliated here who's put this dish on 1296 operationally. That's also the place where the astronaut centrifuge was located. Here on the bottom, I hope that is not interfering, is the Haystack Observatory, which is up in Weston, Mass. And this dish was activated 2 years ago with only about 3 watts of RF on 1296, and they were making sideband contacts off the moon. The Dwingeloo dish in the Netherlands, actually we visited. It's about 75 feet across, 25 meters. And it was originally a research dish, but it's been totally converted to amateur use. And they do sideband, slow scan off the moon, and so on. And it's been a great demonstration project to visit. As you can see, the dish is turned on a track, okay? And it's very accurately pointed. This K0PRT has activated this dish here, and they run about 200 feet of coax on 1296 up to that dish. But still, with all those losses, it puts out quite the signal from Colorado. So it's not easy to convert these radio astronomy dishes back for amateur use, but people have put in the time and the effort and get it pointed at the moon and auto tracking the moon and so on. It's been a labor of love. I talked about the loggers, and here's the example of the 3 loggers that I have. There's the 1ON4KST, and you can see here's somebody putting up S57RR, and he is showing he has 4x6 element Yagis, CQ, EME 50.193 second sequence. Okay, those would be the odd minutes, the second sequence. And he's using Q65 mode. So this is a good place to find and look for others, ON4KST. Here's the 2-meter chat page, the N0UK one. And here's, okay, DJ3FR. Frank, okay, thank you for trying. I hope to see you on my screen, 73s, and good luck. Obviously, they didn't make the QSO. And here's the HB9Q logger, and he has multiple frequencies that you can log into, but you can see how people announce themselves, what they're sending, and they can chat back and forth about getting together on the air. A real QSO has no chat page intervening during the QSO. And all of those services, by the way, are free. I wanted to talk about some of the de-expeditions. Let's see. So I'm trying to think. Michael and his wife, she's M&M, and I forgot her name, Marion maybe. You can see they take their dish with them, and here they're out at the Åland Islands, which you know is up there near Scandinavia. Here's HB9Q doing his grid expedition. I believe this is in Greece, actually, this particular setup. And here's a portable dish with the septum feed. Down here, let's see, Giulio operates, he went to the Rangiroa Atoll in Polynesia. That's a really rare DX stop. And of course, he's on 1296 and maybe 2304. How many of you know where Quetta is? Interesting, because it was actually a de-expedition to one country, but when he got there, the whatchamacallit, the people who check check your passports and so on, and what goods you're bringing into the country, said, no, you don't have the right permit to operate ham radio in this country. So he wound up, that's Zenek from Czech Republic. He wound up going to Quetta, and he actually thrilled a lot of people because nobody is on EME from there. And lastly, I just show you W7GJ, who goes all around the world, and here he is in the Austral Islands off French Polynesia. And it's a real, if you look on his page, you should really go look at the W7GJ page and learn about him. He's real dedicated and spends all his time going around the world making QSOs, and he has a pretty deep pocket to do that, although he does accept donations. And this is the dish I'm using now on 1296. These are the made by W2HRO in New Jersey, and it's a metallized fabric which folds up like an umbrella, just like ET Phone Home. And Gene has activated many states to give people their Work Those States Awards on 1296. And appropriately, he's in Colorado, so he's drinking Coors here. But you can see the setup is fairly simple. The transceiver, the power amplifier, the actual preamplifier is right at the feed with the relay switching. And he runs this off a generator. And I guess this is his sequencer box here, because it's very important that you don't want to burn out your preamplifier. You have to ground its front end when you're transmitting. This dish is not cheap. And at any rate, I figured it would be one of my last chances to get on 1296. So I have one. I decided to buy one. I wanted to talk about the commercial equipment that's available for EME. Certainly, most of you know Down East Microwave, who is now down in Florida here. Kuna in Germany makes excellent gear. Bico, also out of Europe, makes superb amplifiers for all VHF frequencies. W6PQL has developed a whole line of solid state amplifiers, and you can get them from components to boards to completed boards to completed units. And here's some of what his completed units look like. And then there's also other hams around the world, like PE1RKI, and I have his 1296 power amplifier, runs about 270 watts on 1296. Very rugged construction, very well cooled. That's the key with those solid state amplifiers. Lastly, I wanted to show you, this is the PA0PLY EME directory. This just happens to be the 10 gig group. And you can see the stations are listed from the numerals to the alphabetics. And it says what their grid locator is, the band, what type of antenna they have, what type of power, their email, and the name of the op. So you can look, he has, when you go and see these directories, it'll say what band do you want to look. So he has 432 and up. So I think that is almost all I have to show. And again, having lived in a covenants and restrictions community, a lot of times it's don't ask, don't tell. I did this for a while, just sub rosa, and now what's happened is I have actual formal permission to operate ham radio from our condo, but I do not have permission to install any antennas. So again, everything is temporary. It's out on a tripod or you know, a little vertical stuck in the ground or something like that. Or I can operate from my car if I'm operating the repeaters or something. So it makes for a little work to get on the air, but it's certainly very rewarding making some contacts. Here I want to show you why it's going to be easy to make at least one contact on certain bands. I'll move this bar up here. I'll move this over here. Here is Bernd in Germany. I'm listening for the oohs and the ahs. He has 128 11 element Yagis.
Ah.
Yeah. Talk about a deep pocket, a lot of land, and a will to be the strongest 432 station in the world. Frank up there in Massachusetts, he has only this small array of 14 element Yagis. He's one of the, I would say, one of my buddies. We've been to an international meeting with them. Here's Dan HB9Q, and I visited his station in Switzerland also. So starting over here, this is his 6-meter station, antenna. Everything's got 1500 watts. I forgot what his 2 meters, but I think he's got 8 Yagis on 2 meters. Here's his 15-meter dish. And by the way, this is in an industrial property area, so he doesn't have to worry about residents and so on. And all of the station is contained in this sort of trailer, which is mounted on the second floor. And a lot of all the power amplifiers and so on are mounted right behind the dish. And certainly here's his microwave 10-meter solid dish. Now, what I said is you can work any of these stations on 432 EME. All you have to do, even if you have about 50 watts in a small Yagi, is point it at the moon at moonrise. And well, you'd have to make a sked. You'd probably also need to get your computer to talk to your rig, and or your rig to talk to your computer, and use one of the digital modes. But they have made QSOs with people using 3 elements and 50 watts, 10 elements and 25 watts, and recently W3C CJK, who is a Rhode Islander who's down here in Florida, he just stuck up a 8-element 432 Yagi with 50 watts, and he had a digital QSO with DL7 APV. So that's a little of the easy stuff to work. With my foldable dish, the 2.4 meter dish, I've worked stations that have 3-meter dishes on 1296. So I'll leave you with this at the end, which says, have you been on the moon? Will you go out and try it? I have certainly enjoyed this over the last 25 years, and there's a lot of operational and technical info available for anybody who wants to try EME. And people are always anxious to have newcomers because they count their new initials on the bands. So with that, I will, I think, end the presentation.